right. Welcome, everyone, to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and through my coaching business and sound healing business, Wings Unfolded, I help people who are experiencing some stuck in their lives and are ready to get unstuck. And I have a guest with me today, my good friend Marie Weddle. And it is just such an exciting thing to have Marie here because we've known each other for a few years, just a few. But Marie is, she holds a BA in anthropology from Cal Poly Humboldt, an MA in musicology and African studies from Michigan State University, where we met, and a certificate in museum studies from the George Washington University, and a master's of social work from Salisbury University. She's received a professional facilitator training in mind-body skills from the Center for Mind-Body Medicine in Washington, D.C., and has been an adjunct at Frostburg State University in Frostburg, Maryland, in sociology, English, and African American studies, and a special lecturer at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, in world music. She's currently working as an instructor for high school equivalency at Allegheny College of Maryland as the collections manager for the Allegheny County Historical Society, and in her own business as a kinder music instructor and facilitator for music and wellness. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here. It's an honor to finally have our first podcast on your...
I know, we usually have those conversations that are like, we should have been recording this entire conversation.
Yeah. And I know we have lots to talk about that we could probably share over the podcast, the interwebs.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm excited to get started.
Yay! So, so yeah, do you want to tell everyone how we met?
Yes, I love this story. Okay, so we did meet at Michigan State. It was the spring of 2000. So we have known each other for 22 years. Wow. Half of our lives, pretty much.
Yeah.
And we both had teaching assistant appointments for the same class, for an integrative arts and humanities class in world music with Michael Largy. Right? Isn't that what it was?
No, it was Dr. Columbu.
Was that the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then it wasn't world music.
No, it was...
it
was reggae.
2000.
It was reggae.
It wasn't 2000 then. Okay,
that's when we became professional reggae dancers.
That was later. No, that was later.
That's a story for another time.
Yeah. So I knew that you were a graduate student in flute performance. I can't remember if you were doctoral at that point.
Master's.
Master's. And I had just started my master's program in musicology. And, you know, world music, reggae was my thing. And world music, African music. So I was really excited about teaching or getting to be a TA in that class. It had its interesting moments though. But when we met, I remember the first week that we actually started meeting about classes, I guess about the recitations that we would do as TAs with the undergrads on Fridays. Just to kind of touch base about what our plans were. I remember meeting with you in the music practice building in the lobby there on the first floor. Remember that? And one of us, like when we were parting, one of us went up the stairs. I think it was you that went up the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And so for some reason, I just looked back up at you and said, Toodles. Toodles, or that's more like me giving a toodaloo. And
that's when
I knew. The way
that's
that
when
you
I
looked
knew.
at me.
We were meant for each other.
Yeah, the way that you looked at me, and you're like, oh, Oh, okay. I know. Yep. And that was the class too that I think that at one point I asked you for a Sharpie. Do you remember this?
I don't think so.
Don't remember this? I asked you, I was like, hey, do you have a Sharpie? I think it was labeling folders or something, whatever we did back then. And you're like, yes. And you reached in your bag and you grabbed a pencil sharpener and you handed it to me.
It's a Sharpie.
Oh, that's what she calls her pencil sharpeners. Michigan is weird. Oh my God, Michigan. That's what I thought. Michigan people are weird.
I mean, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what Sharpies were.
But then, I mean, we became fast friends. You invited me over for dinner. We had weekly dinners. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Every Tuesday. Tonight's a Tuesday.
Yeah. Look at that.
They had me over for dinners and invited me up to Mackinac Island, invited me to your parents for celebrating Easter. You really just kind of folded me in to your family there. And I saw as many of your performances as I could. And yeah, and after school, we were pregnant with our sons at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They're the same age, they're a month apart or something like that. And we've luckily remained close all these years. And our paths have, even though you were in flute performance and I was in musicology, the way that we've grown over these last couple of decades is that we're doing fairly similar things with our career paths. It's interesting.
Yeah. It has been interesting to see how we both are kind of like circling this drain. Maybe drain isn't really the right word for it, but it kind of seems that way.
Yeah, right. It feels like it sometimes, doesn't it? It really does feel like it sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, just like, eventually becoming what it is that's meaningful to us. My dog is asking to go out. That's lovely. How about not now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So prior to coming to Michigan, something really, really big happened in your life. And, having to do with loss. And that can be something for a lot of people. Losing loved ones can be something that can make us feel a little stuck for a time, right? Like, especially at the time in your life when it happens. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was paralyzing for me. I lost my mom right during the last few weeks of my last semester, finishing my bachelor's degree in anthropology. And I had just spent a year abroad too. So I was kind of reacclimating to the culture shock of being back in the United States. And it was kind of really out of pure chance that I ended up, when I went to Michigan several months later, that I ended up getting into grad school that year. Because I had really just gone out to kind of heal. I had gone out to meet with our friend Andrea, who also grew up in the same town I did in California, but she had moved out there. I didn't get into any of the grad schools that I applied for during the year because it was like kind of around the time my mom had died, right? In December, when those applications were due. So I wrote really awful applications, didn't get in anywhere, 7 different grad schools or something. But so what happened when I finished my bachelor's degree, and my mom died, that the only thing I could think of was to move home to work, to work at home and take care of my 14-year-old sister. And that didn't last very long because it just really was not healthy for me. I was working at a brewery and I was working like 7 days a week because I was working in 3 different departments. So they could put me on multiple shifts, multiple days. Wow. And then they would give me free drinks after every shift. So in many cases, I was drinking like a pitcher a day. And I remember sitting in the brewery in one of the little pub tables with my brother drinking. We were both drinking beer, and he just leaned over and looked at me and said, "What the hell are you doing? What are you doing here?" And I was like, I don't know. I was just kind of floating because it seemed like the options and the plans. I mean, I really excelled in school. And I had gone abroad to kind of make my bachelor's degree more marketable for graduate school in anthropology or folklore or musicology. So when that all kind of happened at once, and I didn't have that success, I just felt kind of buried and paralyzed, like I said. So the first inkling that I had about, oh, like maybe I should go, was my brother asking me, "What the hell are you doing here?" And then Andrea came back, my friend Andy, who grew up on the same road as me in Fort Bragg. She came back for a visit. I don't remember what month, but she came back for a visit. So 2 weeks later, she's like, "Just come and hang out. Just come spend a couple weeks in Michigan. Come after the 4th of July." So yeah, so 2 weeks later was 4th of July. I left on the 5th of July, 99. And within those 2 weeks, I visited some faculty at Michigan State and got into grad school. Like they just ushered me in basically because I went to go visit. So it was one of those things where I wasn't really necessarily paying attention when I was at home to my own power, I guess you could say, to be able to push something forward. I felt like it was gone. Like I definitely had it previously and knew that I had it, but then once my core was kind of destroyed by losing my mother, I didn't really know where to find it again because I relied on her so much for feedback and encouragement. So yeah, I felt like I was really lucky. I wasn't always sure that I was in the right place doing the right thing because I couldn't really step back and think about anything other than being what she wanted me to be, or being, doing what I was doing before she died. I didn't have time. I didn't have time to think about that. I just had to keep going and keep pushing.
What do you
but
think?
There have been other phases of stuck in my life. So I don't want to lie. That was a major turning point, but it was also more. It was an upheaval. It was like a complete upheaval of my identity.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what do you think changed for you? I mean, you said that you lost that core, you lost her feedback, you lost the direction that you'd been getting from her. Had she not passed, what would the direction of your life have been, do you think?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think about that sometimes, and I'm sorry, my dog is being like a horse running back and forth. I think I would have struggled with her, actually. We didn't have a perfect relationship. We struggled a lot. I mean, we loved each other dearly, but that's the nature of mothers and daughters anyway, right? And I was 23. So I hadn't necessarily gotten to the point where I was returning to her, right? So we still struggled. I think that, I don't know what it would have been, because what I was trying to do with my degree and my life was to try to be musical, like have a musical focus in my life, because I was, but I didn't want to be a music major because she was afraid of me being a professional musician. So that I should do something academic instead of musical, right? So my anthropology degree was sort of like a kind of a legacy. Like if I had, she wanted me to go to UC Berkeley, which, you know, the last couple of years of high school, I just burned out and I wasn't really into getting as great grades as I could have. And ended up going to Chico State and then Humboldt State. But the legacy part of it was that I was studying anthropology, which her mother had studied. Right. So it was like I was fulfilling, and her mother became a housewife. So I was kind of trying to fulfill something from my mother in a way that her life was like a prism of women's self-determination. Because she lived through the women's lib movement and did not want to become a housewife, although in some ways she did. So I was very motivated and found my purpose in having, in becoming a professional folklorist or anthropologist. That was how I was going to do it. So I think that would have been, and I can't say that if she had lived, that that's what would have happened. I can kind of hope, but I don't hold it against her for that not happening. You know what I mean? But I honestly, there are some things that, and this sounds a little bit awful, but there are some things, like once you have lost somebody for long enough, somebody's knocking on my door, that's wild. When you've lost somebody long enough ago, you can kind of see a little bit of not good sides to it, but a little bit of relief. And I think that it would have, if I had to take care of her now, I would have really struggled. I would have really struggled. A lot of folks our age are starting to take care of their parents, and I'm across the country from California. I don't think I would be able to do it, and that would be heartbreaking to me. So it's almost like it had to happen. It had to happen. It took me a long time for me to accept that it had to happen, and that it was better for me and better for everyone, even though it was the most difficult thing. It was necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
When do you think that acceptance happened in your process?
Probably not until recently. And there were a bunch of other things that had to kind of fall away for me to realize. I almost want to mute myself for a second so I can yell. I can't answer the door. I don't know why somebody's knocking on the door. A lot of things had to kind of fall away for me to realize. He's going to start barking. I'm going to mute myself. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I would tell jokes at this point, except I don't know any. Except what's brown and sticky?
Oh no, don't. It's not barking yet, but I can't. This is really, I'm sorry.
That's
everyone.
okay.
I'm going to yell. Like, when did I realize that it was necessary? What part of the process, what part of my growth process really? Yeah, I don't think it was until recently. There are other losses, right, that we experience in life in different forms. that kind of, that hurt maybe just as bad or not as bad. And you kind of learn how to survive it. You learn how to survive it. And then, so you kind of, I found my core again. But it was, you know, the kinds of things that fell away from my life were like, was moving here, moving out to Maryland from Michigan. So not having that contact with my close friends in Michigan.
And what year, just for context for people watching, when was it in your life that you moved from Michigan to Maryland?
That was 2011. So that was after I had finished my first master's and had been working at Oakland University for several years in the field that I had a master's in, which was to me a huge blessing, right? And working with people who were extremely smart about what they were doing and how they were representing music of other cultures. So that it wasn't cheesy and canned, that it was very respectful, and in many cases that had access to composers and to teachers from other parts of the world. So that you had more of an authentic experience rather than it being translated through someone in academia. So it was a sweet spot. It was a sweet spot for me, for sure. And then moving here kind of ripped me out of that, not just career-wise, but ripped me out of the community. We had young children at that time. And then since then, there were other things that have kind of, you know, have changed. Like I've changed careers a few times, so that I started working in heritage management in museums. So because I'm still really interested in like the ideas of appropriation and especially of looting material cultures. So that's kind of why I got into collections management, and then eventually into social work, because I feel like there's a real need in this community in particular, not necessarily for therapists, but for a different kind of social work, a different kind of like more community-based and more arts-based social work, because a lot of healing practices currently put the weight of healing on the individual, when really it's the community and the systems that are the problems. And so I'm trying to figure out how to create new systems that are expressive so that people have those kinds of forms of healing available. I got a divorce. That was something that was really, again, a huge shake to my core. Where another thing that peels away, where you kind of like layers of an onion, right? Where you think, or layers of your ego, I guess, where you think you know who you are and what you are, and then you realize that that's not going to suit you anymore. And then, yeah, so there are some professional things as well as some personal things. I took on different relationships with my friends and my community. I'm more politically active now. I did have to kind of let go of being in world music in academia entirely. That's something that I have given up on. And I don't know if it's permanent, but definitely while I'm in this area, it's not gonna, I tried several times and had some success, and then was rejected, not because of my skill, but because of my persistence and my stepping on other people's toes. And I can't handle that kind of, I just couldn't, so I just gave up. I gave up that particular pursuit, but I still use it. It's not that I don't it's like I still, and that's something, I think that's probably one of the things that losing my mother has, oh, the other thing also is that I recently lost my dad. So I do want to indicate that I have lost both parents. I lost him this year. Yeah. But so when you lose someone so close to you, or you lose, your parents, you eventually kind of make sense of how it's still part of you, how they're still part of you. It doesn't feel like it, and it feels like it feels like hell on earth. Like, how can you survive? Like, how can you be anything that you were before? Or how can you, it's an extremely deep grief, right? But you learn that even through loss, there are beautiful things that you can take with you. Even in divorce, right? Even in losing opportunity, or if I lost a particular path or a particular plan that I had with my academic career, I know that I can still use it because I do it in different ways, but it's what gives me some expertise in offering what I can offer now. Knowing how music and health can be intertwined in cultures all over the world, and that we've kind of removed ourselves from that, and be able to give people examples it's more convincing, right? It's a more convincing kind of approach to human nature. And then if you talk about personal loss, I find things that remind myself, I find new things that remind myself of my mom or my dad all the time, that I do, or a way that I move, or something that I remember, or so those things, they do carry on, even though when you're in the midst of it, it doesn't feel like, you can't imagine how it could.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about all of the loss. And I know everyone watching is like, oh my gosh, like I've lost things too, and to varying degrees. Like, that's just part of human experience, is that everything is temporary.
Really.
Everything, absolutely everything. And if there's anything that anybody learned from the pandemic, or anything that's happened in the last 20 years, is that nothing is a guarantee.
Right.
But what do you think your mom's loss taught you about finding your core? Because that was something that you said you realized right away. She was gone, and so was your core. But it eventually came back. So how did that shape the way that you dealt with the core shaking losses that you experienced later on?
Well, it really did take a long time. It took a long time. And it took being pushed to another edge in a way where I felt like I was disappearing in my marriage. And the only way I could describe it, and this is kind of probably part of the turning point of finding my core, was the only way that I could describe it was that when when somebody's drowning, and if someone tries to go, sometimes when they're drowning and somebody tries to go help save them, the person who's drowning struggles, right? They fight. And I felt like that. I felt like I thrashing and pushing, but I was drowning, but I was also not really taking any suggestions or help from anyone. I don't think I was finding the right help necessarily, but that was one of those things that made me realize, okay, I'm pushed up against the wall, right? I have nowhere else to go but here. And I have to go with it. I have to, like, I can't continue in this way. So I think that was probably the turning point for me. And then from then it's been easier to kind of rebuild in a positive way, that sense of myself and trusting myself. Because that's something that gets undermined when you're not living authentically, right? And then when you're doing that for a long time. So I'm not sure how it contributed to other times of feeling stuck or other losses, but it has made it easier for me. I don't necessarily want to use the word faith, because I don't belong to a particular faith necessarily, but it is a sense of just knowing and understanding that I will make it through. And even if I don't make it through, it'll be okay, right? Like we eventually, none of us is going to make it through, right? We're going to perish at some point. But it's okay. Like, it's still going to be okay. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to accept, but it helps kind of humble you. It helps humble you, but it also, it is a motivator. It is a motivator too, because when you recognize, oh, well, I know that I'm only here for a particular amount of time. I don't know how long that is, but I want to live the way that I want to live. I want to make sure that I am pushing in a direction that I want life to be pushing.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting what you bring up, this idea that life is constantly teaching us over and over and over again that nothing lasts forever, including us. Yep. And a lot of times we live as though it's just going to go on forever.
Right.
And, like when you aren't living authentically and you're not trusting yourself, that's what it is. You're living as if it's just going to go on and on and on forever and ever and ever.
And I think that's probably, like, once I started coming to terms with that loss in a way that felt okay, like, that's when I really was able to be more honest with myself and also feel more successful. Because at that point, well, here's the thing, my definition of success changed, I think. Because then it wasn't about the position or the status or the legacy of the degree and the rank of the professorship, right? It was about being true to not just to who made me, but to my own self, to my own being, right? As a unique individual who's not my mother. So it kind of, it transformed, and it grew from something where I was feeling kind of a sense of duty to live up to some expectations, where now it's just become more of, I can do what I need to do and what I believe in. It's not external expectations anymore. It's an internal drive. So when you get to that point, it takes time. So for those people who are experiencing devastating loss, they want comfort now, right? Mm-hmm. And that's unfortunate. It's just not how it works. It does take a lot of time, and you do have to incorporate it into your identity, even though you don't want to even accept it, right? Much less incorporate it into who you are.
Right. You think about the process of grief, the way that we learn about it, and all the stages that we have to go through. That's like that struggling process that you're talking about, where you're drowning and you're also struggling, and you're resisting the entire way through, because why would we want to accept when somebody's no longer here?
No, yeah, it takes so long. As somebody that close, it's just really, yeah, it's a very difficult. Acceptance is key, though. Acceptance is key.
What do you think about our culture and how how our culture how our culture handles other people's grief? You know what I mean? Like that's where we get like our cues about, here's how I think I might need to handle grief, because you watch other people go through it, you watch other people put their own ideas on how it, quote unquote, should go. Right. How did culture affect you in that whole process?
Well, it made me realize how much our culture is lacking, especially white culture in this country. And maybe white secular culture, I'm not sure, but there was really no communication about it in my family. There was eventually, my sister moved to Michigan and moved to East Lansing to attend Michigan State too, a couple of years after I did. So we were able to kind of create rituals and traditions and share things and cry together. And but other people are so uncomfortable with loss, and especially if you're talking about the loss of your mother, because there's almost this assumption that if somebody is to imagine the loss of their mother, they might make it happen, right?
Right.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels
like. It's a disease.
Yeah. Right. Like it's a disease, but if it's like, you step on a crack and break your mother's back, right? Oh, if I actually imagine what you're going through, it's going to do something to my mom, and I can't physically, I would be responsible for doing that if I were imagining it, kind of thing, right? So a lot of people put up a block with even discussing that immense of a loss, and it was isolating. Very isolating, and especially among people my age at that time. Nobody had lost their mother that I knew at that time. And my sister was even younger, and for God's sakes, there are kids all over the place who are even younger. I was 23. Like, I was lucky enough to have her until I was 23. So the amount of trauma and pain and upheaval that young people experience, because it's such an uncommon thing for a young person to go through, is only made worse because people don't talk about it. People want you to be okay, so they're not going to talk about it. They're going to pretend like it's not happening. But I think, and that's one of the things that I felt so at home in Michigan with you and your family. I was offered that space to be able to include her in the discussions, or include what I was going through in part of my life and part of who I was, right? That's not what people don't want to talk about it, because we want to deny it, right? We just want to deny that it's going to happen. However, I feel like if you're embracing it and you know that your time is limited, then you can live fully, right? Because then you're like, okay, well, don't just wait around for the life that you want. When you're on your deathbed, you want to be able to not necessarily check accomplishments off your list. Sure, maybe, some of us want to do that. But did you live in a way that was true to who you are? However that manifests, right? So I think as a culture, we really do have to figure out how to accept and incorporate it more into public conversation, and not just push it away. I have friends here in Maryland, my dear friends, who have recently lost a cousin who was our age. And I watched their family and the community go through it together, and it's completely, and from the outside, it was one of those things where it's like, wow, that's something. That's something that where people can, in a community, be able to honor someone continuously, not just through the ritual and ceremony of a funeral, but through the way that they live and the way that they share memories, and the way, it was just totally different. And it made me really sad. For a lot of us, again, especially white folk, who are very, maybe distant from our extended families, we don't have that kind of maintaining of the social memory of people when they're gone. And when you lose somebody that close, you're like, all I want to do is maintain that memory, right? I need to figure out who's going to share that memory with me.
Right. Well, and memory sharing is so important. That's a conversation we've been having in our household recently about there are certain memories that if you don't share them out loud with somebody else, you might forget them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then also having memories with your siblings or someone else you may have grown up with that you didn't remember, right? Until they mentioned it. And one night we're like, oh yeah, remember that time you did such and such and such and such? They're like, oh, no, but now I do. Yes.
Yeah, right.
So having that kind of, people with you to fill in the gaps, it helps keep someone alive and part of you.
And it's like reminders of who you are. And not that you are your mother. It's not that you are your dad, but
yeah, somebody that you hold dear, and that's something that you share, that time that you shared with them, it becomes something much more dear as time goes on, right? That rather than just the amount of pain in the loss itself, it does morph into something else, which is surprising. It's at this age for me now, it's very surprising. Even the way that I've dealt with my dad's death, because I'm this age, but also because of my experience, I know it's just a new phase of life. It's just a new phase of life, right? I have this concept of time. I don't know if you ever watched True Detective, the first season. No, well, now go watch it. But Matthew McConaughey has this great kind of monologue about time being an illusion. And it's true. Like in terms of the laws of relativity and physics, time is really an illusion just because we're moving through space, right? But everything is kind of happening at the same time. So if the extension of time is the illusion and everything is happening at the same time, then we're always still together.
Yeah.
Right. And then also in some African cosmologies, and there's one particular people in Mali who don't think of, so first of all, many African cosmologies don't think of time as a line, right? That we're moving farther away from a certain point, but that we're actually living in a kind of a spiral or a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But the Dogon people in Mali believe that we're not, if we are moving forward, we're not moving toward the future, but we're moving toward the past. Because as we live through our lives, we are going to become ancestors in the past. So that's our future is the past, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're facing. So you kind of flip that sense. And so sure, the children are the future, right? But yeah, I know. This is so Whitney Houston, yeah. But that actually life is not a forward motion. So even thinking of that has also kind of changed my idea of success, because it's really just, what are you doing now, right? What are you doing now to be true to who you are, period. And that's what success is now for me. Mm-hmm. And right now I really want to be successful in getting my dog to sit down and shut up and stop trying to the house.
Well, I just want to highlight two things that you said that I had to write down.
Okay. Oh, cool.
It's a little wrap up.
Taking notes. Oh, right.
I am. Okay. I've been taking notes. Trust gets undermined when you're not living authentically. Mm-hmm. That was the first one. Mm-hmm. And the second one was, what are you doing now to be true to yourself?
Okay, so if you're not living authentically, like if you're trying to live up to your ego concept of who you are, or if you're trying to pursue something that doesn't necessarily match, you can feel it. Mm-hmm. You know it's not authentic. So you're forcing yourself. You're forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do, and you're also not necessarily. You're not taking care of that part of yourself, that core. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, you're kind of, you're breaking that trust. You're breaking not that you're breaking a promise, but you do have a duty to yourself to be true to yourself. There's not really I feel like there's not really any higher, calling to live, because if we are just manifestations of consciousness, of God's consciousness, and we are just like this little piece of it in our bodies, then we should be doing whatever we can to contribute to that unique expression and that unique experience. So what am I doing now to be true to myself? I think that's probably why I have so many jobs.
I feel the same way. Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like
I resonate with that.
So many interests, and I feel so strongly about so many things. It's not only do I have my job where I'm helping adults find a sense of self-worth in finishing something that they put off a long time ago, or maybe not that long ago, but they don't have another option for finishing it, is extremely rewarding. It's such a rewarding line of work. And then working in collections management in the Historical Society is one of those things that it's one of those passions, like playing instruments for me, that is that gets me into a flow kind of state, right? I'll be so focused in what I need to do to catalog and pack something up and make sure that it's preserved and put in the right room. It's a choreography almost. and that's, so that satisfies that particular part of my brain. And then my music studio, Heartbeats Practice Studio, with being able to teach kinder music and then have some of the music and wellness sessions that I have right now. They're mostly just for children. They are right now just for children, but I want to be able to expand it. But it's really just kind of training for regulation, emotional regulation, and listening, using particular musical practices. So that satisfies, not just kind of satisfies the mothering part of me in a way too, of course, because I love being around kids and I love getting to see babies, but it's also satisfying a little bit of the music performance part for me, even though I'm not necessarily performing to a degree that I would like to. I'm still practicing individually, right? And then also I'm active in our local NAACP. It's not a job, but it's work, right? And it's really important work to me. So I think making sure that my heart is in what I'm doing somehow. I realize now at this point, I can't do work if my heart's not in it. I just can't.
Yeah.
So I have to be able to, and that's where that trust is built, right? It's where I'm keeping that kind of promise to myself that I'm going to be filling my life. And not that I'm financially successful either, but again, that's not my definition of success right now. Okay. But it almost doesn't matter to me as long as I know that my heart is fulfilled, because I'm doing something that I see as necessary, that these particular eyes on this planet see is necessary to be done in my community. And yeah. So that's how I remain true to myself, is that I totally overextend myself.
I hear that. I feel that a lot. So maybe too much. What else, as we're wrapping up here, what else are there resources that you might want to share with people about dealing with grief and loss?
Well, I think it depends on when they have, like, how long ago they have lost someone, or what time of their life they have lost somebody. I would have different resources. People can reach out to me if they have particular questions about that. I read a lot about like childhood trauma and that kind of loss, and also how we experience that in how we hold ourselves, right? How we kind of, our bodies also end up being kind of crushed because our hearts are crushed. But one of the best books that I read, if it's a woman who has lost her mother, no matter what age, the book called Motherless Daughters is an incredible resource for understanding what it is about the relationship that you miss, and what is normal when you go through kind of the mourning process. Like, for example, I have this deadline in my mind, which is awful. It's an awful thing to think about, but it's very common when women lose their mothers young, that they think like it would be wrong for me to live past my mother's age when she died. And that's not very far from now. I'm 46 and she died when she was 53. So I have that kind of concept in my mind, but it's encouraging, or at least it's not encouraging. It's comforting to know that I'm not the only one who has that. And it doesn't even really matter how old you are when you lose your mother, that there are these certain particular things, the way that we relate to our mothers, that contribute to that. I did recently start thinking, though, that on my 54th birthday, I'm going to have to do something really crazy.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, enroll in a PhD program or something that I never thought if I make it to 54, right, then I'm going to do something that I had not just given up on, but, or, you know, something, maybe I'll move to Spain or something like that. I don't know. Because then life will be, then it's just like, oh, this is a life I didn't expect at all. So,
Right.
yeah. So now I feel like I have like, oh, I can look forward to 54. And that's kind of a new development. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll stay tuned and see what happens. If I'm still doing this show in 8 years or whatever, I don't know.
You can Facebook Live at my birthday party.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want some more guidance?
My work email at Allegheny College is the best way to get in touch with me. It's my first initial and my last name. So M Weddle, MWEDDLE at allegheny.edu. Allegheny in Maryland is spelled ALLEGANY.
And I'll try to put that in the comments as well on Facebook.
And I am on Facebook. I think that you have to be friends with my friends in order to friend me, but you can request messages. My studio page is on Facebook as well. Heartbeats Practice Studio. I think it's facebook.com/playyourheartsout. And I think I have personal accounts on Instagram and Twitter too, but that's not really where I do most of my contact.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know it was a heavy topic.
It's okay. I'm glad I made it through without crying. It's amazing.
I mean, between the dog and the person knocking on the door.
That should have made me cry. Sorry, everyone.
It's all good. It's all good. So thank you everyone for being here. It's always so lovely to hear from you. If you have any feedback that you want to share on Facebook or YouTube, I always put these videos there, or my website, Wings Unfolded. You can find all my past videos and whatnot. You can reach out to me, message me on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, all the places. And if there's anything that you would like help with in terms of getting unstuck in your life, please send me a message and let's see what we can do about that together. And remember that it is okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Take care, everyone.